the teen's apparent death has devastated that community.
3 to 4 foot waves pounded the human chains. Rescuers
Nothing last night.
In an instant, a carefree day at the beach can turn to tragedy. The summer of 2003 was one of the deadliest on record for swimmers in Lake Michigan. From August to November 2003, in the small beachfront city of Grand Haven, Michigan, the sirens blared and rescue teams rushed to the scene on 3 separate occasions. But each time, it was too late for rescue. The lake claimed 3 of Grand Haven's native sons that year. Scott Smith, August 6th, 2003, age 17. Andy Fox, September 3rd, 2003, age 17. Daniel Reese, November 29th, 2003, age 19. All 3 of these young men were strong swimmers who had grown up in and around the waters of the big lake. How could this have happened to them? The cold, wet reality is, many people do not understand these dangers or respect the power of these volatile inland oceans, even those who have lived all their lives near the Great Lakes. And the loss of these 3 young men proved that point in a sadly symbolic way. The death of each one was an example of one of the 3 particular dangers lurking just off shores. In August, on a picture-perfect hot summer day, Scott Allen Smith and his friends went to the South Pier at Grand Haven State Park, one of the most recognized symbols of summer in West Michigan. Like so many others have done for years, they chose to dive off the pier to cool off. However, many do not understand about such a pier. It is built over a pile of large, uneven boulders, and it is wider at the bottom than it is at the top part, or cap, where people walk. These large rocks help reduce erosion from the waves and currents that move swiftly along the structure, and they line the edge of the pier all the way out to the end. They are difficult to see from the surface, so those who choose to dive from the pier put themselves at enormous risk. On August 6th, 2003, Scott and his friends took this risk over and over again until Scott disappeared below the surface for just too long. Friends and family realized something was wrong when Scott did not come up shouting with joy as he did each time before.
We did receive a call from 911 made by citizens on the South Pier that a young man was in distress in the water, a possible drowning victim. We immediately launched our 23-foot response boat.
We arrived on scene, and there was actually already a person in the water, an older lady, probably 40, 45, who had jumped in and actually grabbed a hold of the young man. He was unconscious, and when we pulled up alongside, she kind of backed herself into the shape of the pier head. It's corrugated, so she kind of backed herself inside of there and was pinned while we pulled the young man on board. And once we got him on board, we realized he was not breathing and he didn't have a pulse.
The crew performed flawlessly. They also performed CPR on the way in after recovering Mr. Smith, and he was then transported via EMS to the local hospital.
What they learned later was the cold water combined with the strong current along the South Pier eventually overwhelmed Scott, and he drowned on a perfect beach day in his 17th summer. As the waters of Lake Michigan warm and they collide with cold fronts moving across the Midwest, large and powerful waves are created, and the result is often powerful and deadly rip currents.
Our experience is that when you get waves to the 3 to 5 foot range, you start getting rip current problems. Great Lakes waves are very powerful. They come at you quicker than they do on the ocean. The typical setup to produce very big waves is in the fall of the year, where we have very warm waters of the Great Lakes, you know, up towards 70, 75 degrees in the fall of the year. If we can get an early season cold front that comes down out of Canada and brings very cold air.
Rip currents are created by waves crashing onto the shore. Large volumes of wind-driven water become trapped inside the sandbars and near shoreline.
As waves approach a beach, the wave itself becomes steeper and steeper. And as the wave breaks, it contributes mass to the area near the shore. The mass forms into longshore currents, and longshore currents eventually turn and flow back out to sea, and that's what forms a rip current. These can be very strong currents, much faster than you can swim against.
Often called an undertow, this process has been happening as long as the waves have been crashing, but yet is still misunderstood by millions of swimmers who are attracted to the glistening blue waters and the white-capped waves. Raised near the shores of Lake Michigan, Andy Fox was just 17 when in an instant under the summer sun, he was lost to this power. Andy's senior year at Grand Haven High School had just begun.
Well, from everything I've heard, Andy had a wonderful day up until that point. When he went out, like I say, they didn't plan to go out, but they went out, and there were a couple other girls on the beach that I have actually spoken to one of them, and she told me herself that those guys were having a ball. They were just jumping around and having a great time in the waves, and they went out to the first sandbar, and Andy's friend then wanted to go out to the second sandbar, and he did, and Andy didn't really want to. He said that he didn't want to do that. He wasn't sure that he could swim that well, you know, and it was a little ways out. But he ended up going out, and it started getting really rough, and it was knocking their legs out from under them.
The water was just kind of sucking you back, you know? Like I could stand up and I could almost lose my legs just by standing up, because it just pulls you right back. And I was like, oh, this doesn't look so good. He was pretty strong, you know? I mean, he went on a hiking trip and all that stuff. He was really active. And so this didn't make sense for someone like me, you know, to be able to swim if I was only like 5 feet away from him. And he was just having a hard time. And I was just barely getting anywhere. And I was swimming my heart out, you know.
It was too late. They had lost sight of Andy at that point, but he struggled till the last minute, because both said that Andy, you know, struggled till his face was sticking out of the water. He tried. He didn't want to die that day. He wanted to live more than anything. And
got a phone call from my stepdad saying Andy was lost at the beach, and it was breaking up, and I could hear my mom screaming in the background. Jumped in my truck, drove down to the beach, thinking, from what I could make out, it'd be, you know, get him out of the water, that type of thing, but not realizing that it had happened about 5:30, 5:15, and it was a recovery, not a rescue. So first thing I see when I came around the corner towards the beach, so a sheriff's car, and then same thing when I got to the beach. When night fell, that last little bit, the Coast Guard was flying back and forth. That's when it really seemed like a movie that I didn't want to be in or understand, and then at that point, they had called the search for the day.
Andy's family spent the next 2 days staring into those blue waters, and the next 2 sleepless nights wrapped in blankets on the sand, keeping vigil with friends and family, waiting.
Just kept waking up. If you did fall asleep, you'd wake up and try to figure out why you were there. Then you remember why you were there, and then morning finally came and started over again. And the search lasted 3 days total. Found him on the Friday morning when it was finally calm enough to look.
Andy was the best son you could ask for. He was very loving. He was very compassionate. He said he was my rock, and he was my rock. He had a lot of friends and a lot of people that cared about him because he was always trying to make sure that everybody had a good day. If they were having a bad day, he would do anything he could and give them that special smile that he had. And he succeeded a lot. From all the cards and letters I've received and emails, I had no idea how much he affected so many people.
And the one thing I've always said, as far as always tell your loved ones you love them, at least, at some point, or as often as you can, because you don't know when you don't have a chance to say it again. That was with Andy. And we never, being 8 years apart, we were just getting to the point where we could hang out and work together and that type of thing, and now it's gone in a flash, so that's how quickly things happen.
Andy sacrificed his life. He didn't intend for that to happen, but since it did, I know he would want to warn them and not let their life be cut short like his has been.
They had swam these waters, body surfed its waves countless times before. They just wanted one last taste of the last summer of their childhood. As summer melted into autumn, Grand Haven mourned for Scott and Andy. But the big lake hadn't finished taking its toll yet. Before the year ended, another hometown boy, Daniel Reese, would be swept from Grand Haven's South Pier and into the waves, never to return to his family, his college studies, the life he would have led. Just 19 years young, Daniel was an honor student at Grand Valley State University, majoring in engineering. A 2002 graduate of Grand Haven High School, he was back home in Grand Haven for Thanksgiving weekend. Daniel and some friends were out for coffee on that Saturday night as dark winds howled. A November gale was brewing offshore, and the waves were crashing over the pier as Daniel and friends set out in the dark to walk to its end. In the darkness, no one even saw the wave that swept Daniel off the pier and away from them forever. Scott Allen Smith died August 6, 2003, at age 17. Andrew Burton Fox died September 3, 2003, at age 17. Daniel Luke Reese died November 29, 2003, at age 19. Their deaths were just 3 among 50 recorded on Lake Michigan in the years 2000 and 2003. But these aren't just statistics. They are sons, brothers, friends. They are lives ended too soon, unlimited potential unrealized, futures that will never happen.
That's why it's important that there be something on that beach to help people. And I would give anything if he had the knowledge of how to get out of a rip current, because he was struggling and fighting it so hard.
And the grieving families they left behind hope their heart-wrenching losses will lead to better understanding and fewer fatalities in the years to come.
Or have the respect. I think respect. Great lake, great respect.
Remember, when you walk these piers, when you venture into these waters to swim or surf, you are in the midst of a force you cannot reckon with. You can only arm yourself with the knowledge of how to avoid becoming a victim of these powerful waters of the Great Lakes.